simple, but it allows students like improv.
Welcome back to Design Thinking at Work, the podcast where we explore how people design and communicate using modes other than traditional print. In this episode, I'm talking with Randy Soler, a guitarist, composer, and teacher based in Northwest Arkansas. His work lives at the intersection of performance, technology, and teaching. Randy started on piano in second grade at a Catholic school, where a classically trained nun offered lessons during the school day. He described walking across the street to the convent, taking a half-hour piano lesson once a week, and then returning to class. That early access to music, built directly into the school day, shaped his sense of how powerful it is when kids are given structured access to the arts. In his teens, he fell in love with guitar, eventually studying music at the University of Arkansas. From there, his path included jazz trios, country bands, rock bands, casino cover gigs, and a long-running funk band called Groovement. Along the way, he learned skills that don't come with a syllabus: chart reading, booking gigs, managing time, and learning by trial by fire. Today, most of his design work happens in his teaching studio and online lessons, where he weaves together improvisation, backing tracks, amps, pedals, and digital audio workstations to help students not only play music, but also design their own sounds and ideas. Randy's practice is fascinating because it shows what it would look like when improvisation, technology, and embodied practice come together, and what that might mean for how we think about literacy and multimodality in schools. One of the clearest windows into Randy's design thinking is the way he talks about improvisation. For him, improv isn't random. It's a disciplined way of experimenting, listening, and refining ideas all in real time.
You have to practice making things up, which sounds counterintuitive, right?
He explains that students often think making things up means no structure and is overwhelming. But in his studio, they improvise within constraints: a particular scale, a set of notes, and a backing track in a specific style. Within that boundary, students are encouraged to change rhythms, vary note lengths, start by going up and down the scale, and then start skipping around just to see what happens. The goal is not to memorize a correct solo, but to practice being free enough to have ideas and to hear how those ideas sound. He also compares his music directly to speech.
Speech has a rhythm to it, right? Because everyone talks. Don't talk like this the whole time where it's just exact. I mean, some people do, but it's pretty boring.
It's hard to listen to. Here, he treats speech as a rhythmic design. We don't speak in fluently even syllables. We vary pace, emphasis, and pitch. He uses that to help students understand musical phrasing, and I immediately saw parallels to how I teach my second graders about reading fluency and poetry. We don't want them to sound like robots. We want expressive timing and emphasis. In other words, improvisation in his studio functions as a design lab, where students generate musical ideas, test them against a backing track, and then refine what they hear. That is design thinking. Randy's toolbox is highly multimodal. He's constantly coordinating multiple modes and materials. First, there's the audio: guitars, bass, piano, amps, pedals, and loopers. And sometimes he'll use physical handouts with very concise text. As Randy likes to put it, he notes that screens bring distractions, while a printed handout gives students something tangible to hold and to return to. So even the choice between PDF and paper is a design decision about attention and access. At the same time, he fully embraces digital media. He uses YouTube for backing tracks and demonstration videos, digital audio workstations like GarageBand and even more advanced software, and loopers that let students build layers and effectively create their own band. Inside those digital audio workstations, his design thinking becomes highly technical. He talks about how bass and kick drum often live in the same frequency space. So if both are boosted at the low end, everything turns into a muddy blur. His solution is to identify where each instrument's energy is strongest, cut those frequencies in one track so another can sit there, and boost other parts of the spectrum to give each sound its space. That is multimodal composition. He's designing relationships between sounds, not just individual parts. It echoes the way a writer revises sentences so ideas don't crowd or step on each other. One of the most vivid and exciting parts for me was when Randy walked me through EQ and effects on his amp. He uses simple controls, bass, mids, treble, to demonstrate how they shape the character of sound.
Okay, yeah.
It has a more roundness to it. This has a more hollowness to it. But turn up the bass. Do you hear it?
Yeah.
That's usually when people hear it. Mids, it kind of scoops it.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No,
On
but...
an EQ track, it's like high and low and then the middle. Have you ever seen that? But this has a lot of punch.
Yeah.
The mids do. And then the treble's more... I meant to do that. That's the punchier side. And then treble, just think of the brilliance on the top higher strings. Okay, it's kind of muffled. Now watch this.
Yeah.
And that's the higher frequencies coming out on there. So you can do so much with those three bands if you just sit there. Again, back to kind of improv. You kind of got to sit there and mess with it.
Yeah.
Go, what happens if I do that? How does that change it? The other thing is there's sometimes built-in effects. For instance, there's a chorus, which is... So what this does, it adds a wave in there.
Yeah.
It's not really tremolo, but it has kind of a whooshy sound.
Yeah.
This even gets more whooshier. It's just a different type. This is kind of like a funky...
Yeah.
So they're all different what we call modulation effects, which kind of affect the amplitude and what, I'm talking about waveforms.
Yes.
Okay.
Sort of.
Yeah, so this is kind of like this. So check this out. The tremolo one, it's a square wave, and what they mean by that is it's really sharp.
Yeah.
Wah, 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 instead of... It's more like that. It's faster, but it's not so squared off. So those are what we call modulation effects. And then you have reverb, which simulates how big of a room you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be like a big hall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, did you hear it? Yeah. And then a tighter room would be something like this size room. Very limited on how much it reverbs. Reverberates. And then delay is another effect where it's basically repeating the note right after you play. That's like probably 50 milliseconds because it's called slap. You kind of hear this really quick thing. The note comes right after it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it can go though. And so it can widen portion. And that's just like crunchiness is the way to describe it.
Yeah, I'm trying to put a name to like that.
Yeah, distortion is more like nasal crunch.
I feel like I know that genre of
And this is
sound.
more what we call overdrive, which is another kind of gain. It's just a slight thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also.
Gear here is not just hardware. It becomes a semiotic resource. EQ, reverb, distortion, and pickup selection function like layout, font, and color in visual designs. They don't change the underlying notes, but they deeply shape mood, genre, and audience expectations. He also describes the affordances and limitations of digital tools like amp modulars and software. Randy notes that there are so many amazing things that you can do with digital tools, and there are instant access to many classic sounds. However, some students feel overwhelmed and stuck by the amount of choices and the sheer amount of unsorted YouTube tutorials. Many of his students arrive after trying to learn online and get lost. He then narrows a path and gives options and then guides them through a sequence of experiences so that they can move forward from overwhelming to purposeful experimentation. When Randy talks about composing, he describes a process that closely resembles the writing process. He begins by sitting and improvising, and as he plays, if he hears something he likes, he records it quickly with a voice memo, comes back to it, and then decides to develop or discard it. Sometimes, especially when he was younger, he forced himself to finish an idea just to practice following through. Other times he scraps ideas halfway if they're clearly not going anywhere. Over time, he's become more efficient at making those calls earlier for time management's sake. He also shares advice from a composition instructor. If you are in a creative flow and you have the time, don't stop. Keep us going as long as you can because ideas won't necessarily make sense when you return to them later. That principle guides him. When an idea is flowing, he tries to capture as much as possible in that moment. Interestingly, his teaching ideas often emerge the same way. While goofing around on guitar, he might stumble on a pattern and think, I don't have a lesson on that. Then it becomes a seed of a new teaching resource or exercise. So whether he's designing a song or designing instruction, the underlying process is generate, capture, evaluate, develop, and sometimes abandon and then start again. That's a classic design thinking cycle. To close this episode, I want to highlight 2 implications from this interview for school literacy learning. Throughout our conversation, Randy draws organic parallels between music and language. He shows students that speech already has rhythm and pitch. He uses that to demystify musical phrasing. I recognize the same logic I use when I talk with second graders about reading with expression. If we take that seriously, then even traditional literacy isn't just about what's on print on a page. It's about rhythm and pacing in reading and writing. It's about pitch and intonation in spoken language. It's about improvisation and experimentation with writing sentences, lines, and stanzas. In the classroom, this could look like having students clap and speak lines of text to feel rhythm before reading, asking them to improvise line breaks in a poem and compare how different versions feel, letting kids jam with words the way Randy's students jam with scales and backing tracks. Design thinking in this sense means treating text as something students can shape, test, and revise, not just decode and encode. The second big implication is about creative agency. Randy hears a lot of students say, I'm not musically inclined. He pushes back, arguing that most musicians are not magical prodigies. They simply practice a lot. He also notices how many students, kids, and adults wait to be told exactly what to do, which you might recognize as a form of learned helplessness. In his response, he wants classrooms to prioritize creation and improvisation, letting students make things up, reducing emphasis on rigid rules at the beginning, giving them toy pianos, recorders, and physical instruments and encouraging playful, low-stakes exploration of sound patterns and words. For literacy, the parallel is clear. Students need spaces where they can experiment with language without worrying about being wrong on the first try. This might mean using quick, messy writing sprints where the only rule is to keep on going and keep experimenting. Collaborative storytelling where kids add to each other's ideas in real time. And then opportunities to pair words with sounds, images, and movements to communicate feelings and ideas. Talking with Randy reminded me that design thinking isn't limited to sticky notes and whiteboards. In his guitar studio, design shows up in improvised solos, tone choices, backing tracks, and digital mixes, and in the way he carefully guides students through the paradox of too many choices. His work challenges us to rethink literacy as a multimodal, rhythmic, and improvisational practice where students don't just decode someone else's ideas, but compose and experiment with their own. Thanks for listening to Design Thinking at Work. I'm Maria Taylor. I'll see you next episode.